Howdy, my name is Eduardo, and this is my presentation over cytoplasmic streaming. So, to begin with, a little background on cytoplasmic streaming and exactly what that is. Every cell has nutrients that needs, or organelles, proteins, basically any substance that it needs to get from point A to point B will move through this process. So, cytoplasmic streaming, concrete definition is the movement of fluid substance within a plant or animal cell. And the mechanism is not quite sure, but it was first theorized that cytoplasmic streaming was mediated by the physical contraction of the animal or cell wall or membrane in order to physically manipulate the movement of this fluid and the substances that it contains. But if we look at closer picture of a cell wall, which it might show up later on in this video, I'll remember to point it out, is that cell walls, specifically in plant cells, are very, very rigid and don't allow for much movement. So we know that that's probably not the correct mechanism. Fast forward a couple years later to closer to present time science, and the mechanism still is not completely understood, but through the advancements of biology and most importantly microscopy, we can see that there are certain motor proteins that can physically carry these substances and move them from point A to point B by moving on these long protein fibers called actin filaments. So if you look at the screen right now, it's a standstill image of cytoplasmic streaming. You can see those little dots are substances, and towards the end of this video, I'll point it out again that it'll show the actual movement of these particles. But essentially, these particles will just move through the fluid, which is also known as the cytoplasm, in order to get the substances it needs in and out. So the reason why I wanted to talk about cytoplasmic streaming is that we understand what it is, but we don't know how exactly it occurs or what it is contributing factors. So my main question that is the basis of this project is what determines the speed of cytoplasmic streaming? Because throughout this semester in this imaging class, we've seen slow and fast cytoplasmic streaming. So if we assume that the theory of motor proteins is correct, then we can concur that you must use some type of energy in order to physically move. And that energy would be adenosine triphosphate, which is also known as ATP. So the question is that we know that most cells, or more specifically plant and animal cells, they go through something called cellular respiration, which is used in order to make ATP for energy in order for our daily function. But that ATP is mostly used for physiological functions that are more important than cytoplasmic streaming, I want to say. So the only physical way, plus, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt myself, but if we think about it in a kinetics kind of thought process, then we know that no matter how many ATP, if there's only a fixed number of motor proteins, it'll reach a threshold limit and then plateau. So just to go a little bit sidetrack this video right now, you can see the movement and that's cytoplasmic streaming. You see these big um, molecules, and then you see those small little green ones, I think, that have been dyed, and those are what's actually just moving along, kind of like a highway system, in order to get from point A to point B, in order to drop off any nutrients, organelles, uh, X amount of substance in order to get the cell what it needs. So experimentally, we know that the movement is not dependent on the number of ATP because the ATP serves a function in the motor protein. So we can confidently say that cytoplasmic streaming is actually according to the number of motor proteins, which would make more sense. And we can find this out experimentally through microscopy by finding a cell, finding it streaming, and then dyeing those proteins according to their dynamics. And we can pretty much figure out that if there is more motor proteins, then there can be more or quicker streaming. Thank you.